All right. Excited to kick off our fourth panel webinar today. And so welcome everyone. People are connecting, but we will get this rolling. And so we've been bringing on clients for these webinars, interviewing them. And today our topic is mostly on time entry with some quick wins along the way. I wanted to share a bit of my story about that. Is before starting my MSPs about 17 years ago, I barely had to worry about time entry. I was like in-house IT doing software development, didn't really have to worry about it. But once I started to put money on the table and feed my family, it's like every 2 weeks I'd have to go look at my emails and my calendar and fill up my timesheet. And so that was a real stressor. Yeah, I remember filling out the Excel file. My wife would go to QuickBooks and invoice it out and put food on the table. But obviously that had to change as we built the businesses. We needed real-time time entry. So that will be our theme today. Bjorn will introduce our panelists. Actually, we're bringing in some team members from our own MSP. So you get to hear from them how they're using the product and their perspective on time. I encourage everyone to pop questions into the Q&A or be very interactive on the chat. Actually, go ahead right now. Put in your role in the chat. Project manager, engineer, sales, CEO, founder, whatever. What's your role, and what are you hoping to hear today? Or perhaps some questions. So light up the chat. I want to hear from you all. What's your team size? What's your role? What do you want to hear today? And we'll see if we can weave that in along the way. So our facilitator today is again Bjorn, and has been doing a fantastic job on that. He's got a real heart for helping MSPs, have been an MSP, knows the space very well, the tools like ConnectWise. So he'll introduce our panelists and set the stage for this. So I think that's all I had to cover for intros and housekeeping. So yeah, over Perfect. To you, Bjorn. Welcome. Great to have you again, and thank you for helping us with this.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure, as we say here in the Southeast. No, it's great to be here. I'm grateful to be here with you at the TopLeft team again, and panelists Daniel and Samantha. We had a great conversation last week, at least from my perspective, in warming up for this, and also the attendees that are here live, and the ones that will attend, in the future, watching the recording. Welcome. Yeah, today we get to, I love to emphasize the get to, discuss a topic that's really something I tend to get a little passionate about because of my own history with time. My first real job involved a timesheet, and I completely couldn't stand it. Really didn't understand it, was felt very dictatorial. To the other end of the spectrum, where I was the one, responsible for making sure timesheets were approved on time, and we, quote unquote, invoiced on time, and all those other things. So I think it's an incredibly fundamentally critical process in any organization, especially in a service organization or in a managed services organization. And we're going to get into that a little bit today. Real-time time entry for busy multitasking engineers. So we'll get into questions like how, one of the best ones, I think, and most obvious ones is, how real-time is real-time? What does that really mean? What does healthy time entry look like? Is it the same for every role, every type of ticket? How busy is too busy? It's a little bit more on the utilization side, but in order to decide that, or decide if too busy is too busy, then time data is critical to that question, right? So, and I think as an engineer who used to be the engineer and now have been in different roles, is multitasking. Is it possible? And what are the ways to task switch effectively, if there's such a thing? So enough of me. I would love to get, like Wim was saying, for the ones that are here live, on a scale of 1 to 10, kind of to create some awareness, self-awareness about your existing time health. And so even if you're attending in the future or watching this in the future, recorded, think about, on a scale of 1 to 10, your own health, either your own specific time health or your team's time health on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 being, we got this nailed, we got everything documented, everybody is, quote unquote, happily entering their time, they make very few mistakes, if any. That's a 10, right? That's, quote unquote, perfection, which I don't believe in. So the other end is a 1. Whatever the opposite end of that would be, which is I'm not capturing my time and I'm digging trying to build it from emails like Wim was talking about earlier. So if you can put that in the chat, just a quick number, 1 to 10, how you would assess your health. So Samantha, you're our token engineer, our representative from the engineering world today. Thank you for being here. To get things started, so it's not just me talking and Wim talking, what, in your definition of real time, time is real time, what is your definition, or how would you define it?
I mean, it really just, it depends on the task. And because as an engineer, we have a lot of different types of work that we perform on a daily basis. I have client-facing work, I have internal-facing work, and then I have administrative tasks. And we also have staff meetings as well. So it really just depends on what I'm actively doing about what that means. For me, client work, real-time means entering it as it's happening. Especially if I've gone and made ticket notes, I'm emailing the customer directly and I'm updating them. I mean, it makes no sense not to just enter the time when I'm doing that, especially if I'm emailing them through ConnectWise. That really just makes sense. But for things like admin tasks, staff meetings, those are definitely at the end of the day for sure. That's for our team. That is the standard. It must be done by the end of the day.
Yeah, and I love how you answered that question last week, and you said it again today. Or this came up. It does depend to a certain degree, and there are different flavors of time entry but I think my definition of healthy is at the end of the day, I have to have all my time for that day, because if I sleep on it, the data will tell us I've leaked some time, I've forgotten some detail, or I put somebody else in a bad place. But yes, client-facing time, because there are other people that could potentially be working on that same client, and they may need to have the information that you just put in that ticket, or how you dealt with that conversation with that client. So perfect. Yeah, Daniel, on your side, you've been an engineer and now you're managing engineers. How have you, as a team manager now in your organization, how do you define real time, and have you created policies and procedures to help people really, try to move towards that target of real time?
So it's very similar to Samantha. Client-facing work is as close to real time on the clock as possible. I know as an engineer formerly, interruptions are constant, and if you're not keeping track of time, if you don't have that time entry open when you're doing the ticket, you're going to lose time. So we teach our engineers right from the day they start that you open a ticket, you start your time entry, then you work. If you had an interruption, you manage that interruption in the ticket, right? Like whether it's using the restroom, whether it's getting a coffee, whether someone asks you a question. The goal is to have your whole day entered by the end of your day. But of course, as Samantha said, there are things that happen. Admin time, meeting time, stuff like that sometimes get centered at the end of the day. But the overall goal for our team, and we reiterate this constantly in our meetings, is real time. Full 8 hours by the time you sign off for the end of the day.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And how, just a quick follow, how successful are you in that as an organization, would you say, on a scale of 1 to 10? Moderately. Okay.
I would say, I would say we're probably sitting at around a 7. For myself, just as an example, I have a time entry open for this meeting right now. I have a time entry. When my team members go on site, that's where we tend to lose the real-time time entry, because they go on site for that block of time. They typically enter it when the next available slot is. So in some cases, that's the next morning. But if they're in office or at their desks working tickets, it's reasonably real time.
I'll bounce this back to Samantha. Do you have a end of day checklist that you have created for yourself, or is there one that you and your teammates kind of have agreed upon? Is it in your organization that hey, by the end of the day, I have this checklist I got to go through?
I think we have overall guidelines, which is, end of day for sure. and at the very, very latest 9 a.m. the next day, which, I mean, we start at 8:30 and that doesn't really give you a lot of time. So, I mean, end of day before is really the best time to get our time in. But we do have a lot of liberty in how we kind of manage that ourselves. You know, we do have the requirement, as Daniel said, that we are working 8 hours a day. So our time entries must add up to 8 hours every day, which is the main goal. And I think really a lot of the issues for us tend to get shaken out in the timesheet review process, which is what we do every 2 weeks instead. So during that process, that's when we typically, you know, we have a lot of tools to help us find things that are maybe not under the right agreement or not under the right just small oversights in the time entry process. This is our catch-all for making sure that we don't accidentally make mistakes and build the wrong things. No,
it's
you know, we have a lot of tools to. Maybe just a feedback there.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that was.
That was my boo-boo, sorry. Keep going.
It's okay. Distraction, another darn distraction, right? Yeah. No, and I think it's all about checks and balances, right? And you know, there's a process. You know, time entry is a process. It's a core process, and the procedures. Everybody has you know, there's an input to the process and there's an output to the process, and the time approvals is absolutely critical. And I think Wim sent it out in one of his emails. You know, just a quick segue, and then we'll get into you know, a little bit of actually looking at the tool, Wim. So if you want to pull up the top left UI here, we'll talk specifically how TopLeft helps with time entry, right? Why, you know, why is this, you know, why are we looking at TopLeft and why are we talking about time entry, and how does TopLeft fit into that? One of the reasons we picked this as a topic is I heard a story. I'll just keep it at that, and I'm first person in this, you know, I'm not secondhand or third hand. The feedback came back from one of their coaches. They did an assessment, and the top thing that they need to work on as an organization. This is an ISO 27000, been around for 20 plus years organization that I feel is pretty operationally mature. And they identified their time entry health as the most important thing, because they recognize that they could get better information and share information. The quicker they do that, it's more professional, and there's all kinds of reasons, right? Their client service, their client experience would be better. That was their number one thing that they decided to work on for their Q rock, you know, Q1 rock or whatever, Q3 rock. So yeah, and then Wim showed me time entry. You know, how does TopLeft help that specifically? So Wim, you know, if you could just show us specifically in TopLeft what you see how TopLeft helps, and then also Samantha and Daniel, let's jump in here and interrupt Wim whenever we see something that we like.
Yeah, so here's a basic board, let's say, and I've filtered it to, based on I clicked on my tickets, so it's only showing this engineer's work from out of the 71 tickets. He's got 14 tickets. So on the in progress column, the idea is about top left flow is working from the top left, grab your card, work on it, do the work, put your notes in the time, done, on to the next one, a single piece flow. So on this in progress, I can click on it. I see all the ticket information. I can come right to the time and notes tab, enter my time here. So you could just kind of lay it out a lot like Autotask or ConnectWise is. You can go and fill it out. You can just fill that out here, or you can also use a timer. So if you started the timer on the card, if you go over the card, we're going to see a start button. Start working on it. You go onto your tools, whether you're remoting in the computer, you're running PowerShell stuff, you're reading documentation, going into portals or doing the work. You might have timers running on multiple cards. So if I start, so it's got 15 seconds on that card, I can start the timer on this other one, audit the G Suite licenses, do that. So going back and forth, very easy. If you're resuming that other one because it's ready to work, then go resume that timer. When you're ready to record, you're just going to hit the record button here. So again, the second card, that timer is going up, but the first one is paused at 16 seconds. So I hit the record. It's put into time. I can override it and say, well, it was actually 0.5 of an hour. Put in your agreement. Put everything you need to do here. You've got your notes. You can mark yourself as done on that scheduled entry. Add it to the notes. Send it to the client. Do the other resources. I'll just submit this here. Can also change the status, of course.
Yeah,
They're
I mean,
done.
When I saw this, and I've used ConnectWise since 2006, and I've entered my time since 1997. So it's been a minute since I've started any time in different tools I've used. And this just, I mean, I'm also a visual person, right? So for me, instead of looking at a list of tickets and seeing them in the card and having the ability just to click this play, the start button on the timer, for me, that made my brain click, right? So Samantha, is there something that, or I should go to Daniel next. Daniel, is there something in this UI that strikes you as far as the time entry?
Yeah, I mean, just like you, when I was an engineer, I had a list of tickets, sometimes hundreds of tickets long. Keeping track of what was in progress, keeping track of what I was actually doing minute to minute was quite difficult. The top left UI makes it really simple to visualize, and the time entry aspect, I mean, you just, yeah. We try and keep the work in progress down to 1 or 2 tickets in progress so that the task switching doesn't happen as much, but the ability to just click play and have the other one automatically pause if you have to task switch is awesome.
Yeah, and as Alex pointed out here in the chat, and he's very impressed with the priorities that we have in the demo. That the coffee machine performance is critical, right?
It's got to be optimal. That's the fuel for techs.
Yeah, I mean, if we don't have that prioritized, everything else falls down, right? Yeah. So, but that's the other part of this, though, is the prioritization and conflicts of priorities. So, you know, jumping ahead a little bit, Wim, to the other slides, you don't have to switch over, but you know, we talked about time thieves, and you do a great talk on the time thieves, and you want to, if you want to pull that slide up, yeah, you know, what are the things that help put a stick in the wheel, right, of healthy time? And the number one time thief that we'll talk about today, and then arguably is the number one time thief, is too much work in progress. Kind of hits on the multitasking. Yeah, I can multitask, or I can task switch effectively. There is tons and tons and tons of data out there in the Google sphere or the, you know, AI sphere of, no, the human brain can only work on one thing at one time, and the diminishing return of the effectiveness, the more things you have in progress at one time, the less effective you are across all of them, or something like that, to that nature. So yeah, Wim, why don't you just talk about these 2 bullet points and then switch back to top left and talk about that work in progress, you know, aspect, right? Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, so we call it a time thief because we don't see it lurking around, where it's kind of a blind spot. But having too much work in progress, we don't even realize what's there. We don't even know what's on our plate. It's all like a mental list. It's nagging thoughts, different things we're working on. It's not even in the system. It's not written on paper. It might be coming through chat or email commitments we've made to people. It would say yes way too much,
Right?
Because we've got no means to really see what are our commitments. It's not written down. It's on the mental list.
So, yeah, let's pause on there. So Samantha, you know, not saying no enough. There's an art form to saying no, right? And as an engineer, sometimes it's hard to say no, because I mean, I'm speaking from, your boss comes, or my boss came, and he said, hey, well, I need this done, and I'm like, okay, you know, I'll do it. You know, now that I'm a little bit older and hopefully a little wiser, my answer is, well, actually, I'm currently working on the following, and these are the priorities. And so let's discuss priorities, right? I mean, that's how I respond. Samantha, what about in your organization now, and how do you approach, quote unquote, saying no?
Actually, I mean, really recently, I think we've started doing a really good job of this internally. And this is coming down to some tools that we've adopted. Crafty Penguins works out of a pod setup. So we have pod 1 and we have pod 2, and there's 4 engineers in each pod. And we have an overall team meeting, which we meet once a week, and we discuss things as a team. But we also have a pod meeting where we discuss all of our in-progress client work. And in these meetings, we get a general idea of how busy each individual is. And we actually use this check-in for our long-term project planning. So if all of our engineers are completely slammed, we're actually not taking on new project work. we're queuing it up. At the moment, I think we're 2 to 3 weeks out in terms of accepting project work, simply because we know that, you know, we have other commitments. We have what we call proactive work, or TLC agreements, where we're patching and maintaining servers. So this is work that needs to be done on a recurring basis. We also have fires. Fires happen. You know, we have to account for things going bump in the night or things going bump in the day. And these can suck up untold amounts of time. And they can really put dents into, you know, your project planning and things like that. So I'm lucky that I personally don't have to say no too much. That's happening at a level that's higher than me. So
well, yeah, no, it's fair. I mean, I think that is the responsibility of the people that are quote unquote, you know, above or whatever, the people that are deciding, you know, determining what no is and what's okay, and what the process is and the structure. So Wim, inside of TopLeft, if we can focus on, you know, work in progress, you know, from a visual perspective, and again, I recognize everybody's different, but I think it just helps to see. So talk about this screen from a work in progress and what's sort of ideal, Daniel. From your team's perspective, what are you looking for when you're saying, hey, this team or our team has too much work in progress, or this team member has too much work in progress? What are you going to?
So, I mean, work is like water coming out of a fire hose, right? It just, as long as it's on, it just keeps coming. We put flow control in place. We have a service coordinator whose job it is to balance these. So there's a couple of things that we look at. One is the number of tickets the tech has in progress, the number of tickets the tech has in waiting. So techs have this really bad habit of stuffing tickets in places where they can start something else, right? They're waiting on something, and they just go there to die, right? And so the service coordinator has 3 real jobs when looking at TopLeft. One is that little gray number in the top of the box there, at the top of the tech, with the overall number of tickets that tech has in their queue. She balances those so that no one tech is overwhelmed. And then the in progress, she makes sure that the tech only has, like, at very max 3 tickets in progress, and they have to be related. If they're not related, they're not really in progress. And she follows up on the waiting tickets. So we have a kind of a 3-strike rule with waiting tickets. 3 strikes. I know softball, baseball, sports analogies, right? The technician has to reach out to the client by email or by ticket. Technician has to reach out to the client by phone, and then the technician escalates that to the service coordinator to follow up on. Right?
Baseball.
So ticket is,
so that, and the 3-strike rule, I've heard that multiple times, and different flavors of that, right? So, but it's the point that, so keep going. I like that analogy. And so you have the 3-strike rule for waiting.
And so if the client does not respond after the service coordinator has reached out to them, the service coordinator writes a note in the ticket saying, "Hi, this issue clearly isn't a priority at the moment. Please feel free to reopen the ticket," to close it off, in order to kind of keep that WIP down, right? And keep the technicians moving forward and keep the work flowing. So
and I think that flowing, I think, Wim, one of your favorite words is throughput, and the definition of throughput, you know, all these words we throw around, I think it's critical that your organization defines what is healthy throughput for our organization. And Daniel just asked a question, right, of how many techs does your service coordinator currently manage? So Daniel, can you answer that?
At the moment, we have 4 full techs and 1 trainee on the service side.
So a 1 to 4.5 ratio ish. Is that intentional, or what's the capacity of that service coordinator to take on more resources?
I'd say honestly, the service coordinator right now could probably take about double that number of technicians, but we have her doing other tasks as well to kind of fill that up. I think once you hit about 8 technicians, balancing everything becomes a major juggling act.
Yeah.
Right. Because she's also responsible for making sure that the priority is set, so the technicians don't have to think about what the most important thing on their plate is. To save that interruption time, they just grab the most important ticket.
Yeah, and you know, this could be a potential topic for a future panel, right? I like the terminology that you talked about is controlling the flow, right? Of the input, and I think in inputs and outputs, right? That's my brain, you know. This service factory or service thing that I've got here working, I've got to make sure that I've got quality input coming in and not too much of it. And when I have too much of it, I gotta do something as a manager of that factory. I have to say, okay, well, we've got too much input, or it looks like we're going to get too much input. I'm forecasting that. So what do we need to do, right? Samantha, on your work in progress, what is effective for you inside of TopLeft? Or is there a specific screen, or what's your visual management of in progress or WIP?
That would be this. We have my technician view. So we have our Crafty Penguins board, and then I just drill down in on my own specific view. I guess that would be the My Tickets button that that Wim was essentially showing earlier. Yeah. And this is just, I mean, I have this as a pinned tab on in my browser, and it lives right next to my Outlook. It lives right next to my calendar. It's one of the most important views in my day. And it's usually the first place I go in the morning. I get an idea, you know, I'll check this page. You know, when I come in the morning, I've got a general idea of where I'm going to go with the day, but reviewing this ticket list helps me to remember, oh crud, I forgot about this. There was this issue at the end of the day. It was a really small, it's like a 15-minute task, but you know, it needs to be followed up on. And so this view really helps me remind myself the small things, that so they don't get you know, sifted out accidentally. And then you know, this is talking about enterprise OS stuff, but you know, you end up only working on the rocks, and then all the pebbles don't fit in the jar at the end of the day. So it's really important to make sure that we have time for the pebbles too.
Right. And you know, obviously there's a lot of color coding going on here, and you know, I'm assuming, you know, get the red out. That's an old ConnectWise thing that I have stuck in my head. But you know, red lights, you know, in society, red is not. We want to get the red out, right? You know, we want to. That's something to look at. So how much does your team, Daniel, or do you rely on the color, you know, coding, so to speak, and how important is that to your work in progress or other procedures that you have and conflicting priorities and things like that?
Well, the color is, yeah, it's a key factor when we're looking at it. When we do our huddle in the morning, the only cards I'm really concerned with are the ones that have red on them, or ones that I know are a priority. Right. So anything with the amber sidebar saying that it's urgent or quick response, anything that shows red, over budget, over time, no notes in, those are the things we talk about. Those are the things that need to get moved forward. And that's just crucial to managing the tickets.
So you said something earlier. Oh, Wim, go ahead.
I was gonna say, we have this keyboard shortcut like shift+C will only show the cards with those warnings. So you can easily see, filter out the stuff that's okay, and then what's left is all the warninged and neglected work. So you can go and peck those off one at a time and clean that up.
I love it. I love that. I learned something today. Thank you. I mean, it's amazing, right? I mean, and it's managing by exception, right? That's an old you know, tool framework, whatever. Yeah. So yeah, I don't. To me, this is, you know, too much on one screen, right? So I would have to figure out, for me, my flow and what I would need to filter down. And there's a I would call work instruction level document or checklist for me when I would work this, and how I would break it down. And so one of the things, Danny, you mentioned earlier, I think today, about how you start your day. Kind of asked Samantha that earlier, how she ends her day, but you know, how do you start your day? It's at the huddle board. Is that what you call it?
Yeah, so it is
literally
just a snapshot of the in progress tickets.
Yeah.
Which for us means in progress, scheduled, waiting, or needs attention. So things like client response. And those are the only tickets we look at first thing in the morning, because those are the only tickets that need immediate action. Everything else is queued.
Yeah, perfect.
are you taking, is that a board without this like backlog or new column and the completed, or you just ignore those?
The nothing should ever go in a backlog. But the new tickets, nothing hits the technicians in a new state.
Yep.
Horse analogies, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Horse analogies.
I don't know what that was.
Yeah, no, nothing should be hitting the technicians as new. The service coordinator should have triaged everything and should be ready to be worked, so that the technicians don't have to concern themselves with that. They don't have to waste time on it.
So yeah, I mean, I guess the point is you could hide, I guess when what you're driving at is you could hide these columns depending on what I want to look at, what I want to focus on, right? So in my role and responsibility as an engineer, I don't really care about new. I don't really care about other columns. I care about, ready, scheduled, waiting, and progress. And I really don't even care about completed because I've done my work, right? So as an engineer, I just really want to focus in on what my responsibilities are.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So then the other topic, and you guys that are here, please, if you want to fire off questions, if you have them, if there's specific things that you want us to look at. But I think the other conflicting priorities I've mentioned a couple of times is another time thief. So I don't know if you want to throw that slide up there just for pure recording purposes, but the time thief, work in progress is one, but what's the time thief number two, conflicting priorities? Wim, what's that all about?
Well, not knowing how to prioritize our work. So if we're unclear and everything's important, then it's like customer comes or the boss comes or somebody else comes with a request. It's like, do I say yes or no? I don't know what's on the list. Do I drop what I'm doing? So it's going to be easier to get interrupted that way because everything seems like it's important. So somebody say, I've got a quick question or I'm stuck, but should we actually be helping them now or finishing what we're doing? And when people are unclear or unsure, it's just they're spinning their wheels and it creates anxiety and confusion and just mentally it's not good. We want clarity, focus, one thing at a time, that they can say no with confidence. And or it's maybe not no, it's not no for never or no forever, but no for now. Or hey, I've got these 5 things. Be able to have a conversation with the client, your manager, somebody else, and saying, yeah, I've got these 5 things or 10 things on my list. Here's my Kanban. Is where do you think they should slot in? And they can look at it and like, yeah, okay, maybe not now, but tomorrow is fine or Friday is fine. So there could be conflicting things that way. A common one though is between project and service is if you got people doing both. They got to help with onboarding a client, a server migration, a 365 domain setup, and then they're helping with printer support and Wi-Fi support and stuff. So if they're split focus that way, it's hard for them to be held accountable on their results because they can always say, well, I was busy with the project. So these proactive tickets, like testing the backups for this client, yeah, they're down the list. I didn't get to it because of the project, and vice versa.
Right. Yeah, and so conflicting priorities. We mentioned how to say no earlier, but it's really not saying no, right? It's just saying, hey, I want to help. That's the mindset. I want to help. And having the conversation is like, I have these things currently in progress, right? So the two time thieves are related. You have, I have these things in progress that have been determined as priorities, then something else comes up, right? So Daniel, as far as your team and defining priorities, do you have clear procedures and definitions of what a priority, what takes precedence?
Yes. So I run the service team, so we don't necessarily deal with projects much. We split that out a while back because we found exactly that projects and client-facing work come into conflict an awful lot, and neither ends up getting done. So on the service team, the priorities are very clear. Client-facing work comes first. If a client has an emergency or the client needs work, that gets done first. It goes to the top of their queue. Followed by certain priority recurring tickets that have to be done in a particular time every month, followed by everything else.
So yeah, and so Samantha, in your, and Wim, maybe you can flip over to top left for this visual, right? So you have a sense of priorities and what's in, what you need to be working on. And I'm sure you guys talk about that in your team meetings, and those have been defined to a certain extent. How do you, in your engineering view or my ticket view that we looked at before, what catches your eye? What's important to you as far as priorities of, let's say I've done all my in progress stuff. Now, what do I do next? What's my next priority?
Next priority is going to be the ready column, typically, or double checking in on the waiting stuff.
Right.
Sometimes things, as Daniel mentioned, that's where things go to die sometimes. And every once in a while, we don't have a service coordinator, so it really is up on the individual technician to kind of manage their own tickets and determine when something that's waiting maybe should just be closed. Because a lot of times tickets end up in waiting because we were waiting to see if the issue recurred or something like that. And then after a week or so, we can just go close that ticket off because it didn't recur and we don't need to follow up on it. But then other than that the ready column would be, where we pull from things next. And that should be, I would call the ready column is what should be the engineer's backlog. Not the backlog. Rather, that's the stuff that shouldn't really be interrupting the engineer because it's too far out.
Right. So within, I'm looking at this screen and so I'm just thinking from a sorting inside of one of these screens, Wim. I mean, I'm assuming that you can, if you tag a ticket as quote unquote a priority 1, there's the priority that you have organizationally and procedurally. Then there's the actual categorization of the ticket itself. How does TopLeft handle that in the visual view?
Yeah, so there are a couple things going on. So if you look at the priority, which is an actual field on the tickets in the PSA, we're representing that as a color on the side of the card. So you could actually do a swim lane by priority. So it'd be one way, which when I talk about conflicting priorities, I think this is pretty clear that you got to do your emergency, your quick response, your normal. But I'm just thinking of there's different types of work. That's what I see as more of a conflict.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's true. But here's the other thing. Well, here's the classic. Everything is an emergency. Everything's a priority, right? So, that's the service coordinator and the service manager's job, in my opinion, is to help the engineers on the front lines who are absolutely critical in communicating with the clients. And I would argue, one of the key parts of an MSP or healthy MSP is having engineers that really are engaging with the client and able to do that with not much fear, uncertainty, and doubt. The FUD factor is low, right? They feel like they have the service coordinator and the service manager helping them, and when the priorities aren't clear. So Daniel, when you think about priorities of the actual ticket itself, not necessarily how the engineer is working, are you doing it this way, and how do you define emergency response? Is there a clear definition between priority 1 and priority 2?
Yeah, so quick response is typically something that is reasonably urgent, but urgent to a small number of people, right?
Yeah.
Like if one of our clients calls up and says, we have someone starting today, sorry we didn't give you a heads up, that's quick response, right? Okay, no problem. The next available technician will get to it and get you going. Their infrastructure being down, that's emergency. And if it's, regardless of what it is, if it affects the entire organization, it's an emergency. If it affects a critical part of the organization, it's an emergency. If it's going to inconvenience some people for an hour, it's probably high priority. And that is something that the service coordinator determines when the ticket comes in, and she labels it exactly with the color coding from ConnectWise. And then anything that is high priority, either quick response or emergency, goes straight to the top of a technician's ready queue, ready to be pulled.
Yeah. So Wim, this screen, conflicting priorities, these are the different colors here represent the different types of work, correct? Is that what it is?
Yeah. So this is using a style profile. So I set one up called conflicting priorities. So I've done some rules. So admin is tickets on the ConnectWise board called admin.
Right.
And likewise for the other one, this is mentioning different boards. So it could be whatever boards. You might have a proactive board, monitoring, your backup board, your billing board, your procurement board. So I just set up the color highlighting. The pro services has no color, but if I go Linux, it's got this garish, nasty pink color. But you
Right.
could do this on the work. So here's the work type, which is a common ITIL thing, or the subtype, or the project. So you can look at those different fields and then style it different ways, like the left bar color. You could set a border size of medium, border
Yeah.
color, whatever you want. So you could,
So
the
yeah,
different
so
types, priorities, queues, whatever, is customize it to how you like. It's like if you had a whiteboard, a physical Kanban,
right.
you could have different color sticky notes to represent different types of work and priorities that way.
Right. Yeah, and again, that's the whole visual nature of task flow or task management within Kanban world, and the within a board even I saw that you had type, subtype, and item there, right? That's a service ticket type, subtype, and item. So even within a board, you could set different color coding if you wanted based on the type within that board. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. Well, good. Yeah. I mean, I'm thank you, George and Daniel and Joshua. If I missed anybody else as far as who responded, so Joshua is he's on the upper end. If you don't, he's at an 8. Daniel's at a 7. George, maybe just today this is you're a 5. That's you're not doing too bad, but there's some stuff in there. So yeah, if there's any questions from you guys, thanks for the input. If you saw anything or have any questions on how to get from where you are and where you want to get to on your ratings, reach out. Is there anything else, Samantha or Daniel, you want to say from a time entry perspective that we absolutely have to say today? I'll start with Samantha. Put you on the spot.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that the top left UI has really made it's a lot easier. I find it much easier than going into the ticket for many circumstances. Sometimes the ticket view is a little bit more helpful, but I think I've really taken to just using top left directly for time entry. It's super convenient. It's a lot easier to find what's got my name attached to it. It's also a lot easier to use than the time entry UI specifically in ConnectWise. You know, when you go to your timesheet and you go to your day and you add stuff from there, it's super difficult to find the ticket I actually am meaning to enter time on, and versus just going to the top left UI, clicking on the ticket and entering time there.
Yeah, the other thing you said about, just reminded me that you have the UI in ConnectWise, because you can't hide fields, right? What was the term you used for that?
Information dense.
There it is.
ConnectWise is just so incredibly, I mean, you go and create a new ticket and there's probably 80 fields that you need to fill in or should fill in.
You don't, you feel like you should fill in, right? Have I really updated all the fields I need to update versus the UI in top left in the time entry screen? It literally is, from my perspective, is certainly a cleaned up version, and it's like, okay, it's obvious what I need to fill out and what I don't need to,
Exactly.
Yeah. What about you, Daniel? Is there anything on time entry health that we have to?
I say this to all our new technicians that our product is your knowledge and skill. The way we package that is in time, right? So if we're not mentoring our time, we're not selling a product. And so we work really diligently with them to make sure that time entry is fundamental to their, to their day.
Yeah.
Because it's crucial. It's one of the most important things in being an MSP. It sucks. I openly admit entering time sucks. I was internal IT for a good half of my career and never had to enter time until I came to an MSP. But it's basically what we sell. So
yeah, I mean, we could have a whole separate conversation about this. I mean, I think time entry gets such a, it has a bad reputation, or brings up sort of different kinds of stressors, right? I try to, my mindset is that this is part of my job. This is part of me delivering the best service that I possibly can to not only the client, but also for my own internal purposes, right? Of hey, I need to know, where am I spending my time, and do I need to look at this, and do I really want to spend that much time on X activity, or does it better for me and the organization to spend it on Y activity, right? It's that kind of question as well. But yeah, I think we're Alex. Thank you for your comment about the new UI on the time entry. I think that's what we were showing earlier. I think that's fantastic. Wim, as far as call to action, yep.
Yeah, I was just gonna say with the dispatching is we do, like, our coordinator is really not dispatching tickets. So there's a couple of things if the technician has to go on site, which is a very small part of what we do. But basically we have like 20 engineers and very little dispatching, I think, compared to most MSPs, because it's self-dispatch and Crafted Penguins, that's about 10 engineers. And everyone's actively working tickets, and it's just, it all kind of flows and goes through. And in Daniel's team, we do have Chelsea coordinating there, but she's not putting in people's calendars. So it's saving a lot of time.
No.
So we've heard from MSPs that with a pull-based flow using Kanban and these agile principles is they've dropped 1 or even 2 dispatchers.
Yeah, instead of actually scheduling the ticket and the resource, you just put them in it. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, it's not dispatching. We think of it like an assembly line where each technician is a separate line, and the service coordinator's job is really just to push the product down the line that's least busy, and we just keep it flowing that way.
Yeah, I mean the main it sounds like to me the main job of the coordinator is to
Coordinate.
quote unquote triage the ticket, right? And make sure it's as clean and up to date as possible, and then say, okay, now it's ready to be worked, right? And who has the capacity to work? Okay, I'll put it over here now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this,
right.
we have this TopLeft teamwork transformer, which is kind of the proven process for getting up to speed with the things we've talked about. Obviously, you start with visualizing, create your board, engage your team to educate why you're doing this way of working, like these time thieves, minimize the work in progress. There's other ones, getting your daily huddle going, as Daniel mentioned, defining goods. We talked about that today, using the coloring, the warnings, the errors, like the work in progress limits in each column, those different thresholds, and then just experiment. So we have a white paper on this. So I won't call it a white paper, but a sort of a how-to. It's a 10-page document, so you can hit the resources page to grab that. And then encourage engaging with us. If you're not using TopLeft yet, start a trial with your own data. So you can play with the visualizations, create these boards, and try it out with your team. So you can book a demo. And if you're already using TopLeft, I encourage you to book a call with your dedicated customer success manager. Just hit this address here, which we'll put in the chat, to book CSM. And everyone's got room to improve. We have a master checklist for implementation with clients, and I know very few clients have everything checked off. So we can help you dial in the product, the practices. So a lot of this is mindset and habits, like running really good huddles, making those effective. If you book a call for either the demo or get a call with your CSM and start that relationship, we'll gift you a copy of this work and making work visible, exposing the 5 time thieves to optimize your work and flow. So we touched on 2 today, and there's 3 more, and the book's got fantastic stories and visual examples of that. So we're happy to get that off to you, a gifted copy. So any last questions? We'll grab that. Anything there? I think we've covered everything.
I don't see anything. Yeah. I would just say that, when I saw the word, we were talking about this slide earlier, seeing your own data, and the word demo threw me off, right? So I just want to say out loud that this is you looking at your data through the TopLeft filter, right? So that's it's not a demo of demo data. It's actually you looking at or doing a trial with your data, and it's again seeing your ticket information in a visual tool like this can be incredibly impactful in a positive way.
Yeah, a lot of people get shocked at what they see when the data is pulled in. You set up the board and set up the columns and the swim lanes. They're like, oh wow, there's all these tickets that have been totally orphaned and abandoned, neglected.
Yep.
Cracks in the pavement. So good. And yeah, thank you, Bjorn, for facilitating this. Thank you, Daniel and Samantha, for your contribution, sharing your stories and experiences. Really appreciate that.